The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here. Dan Rylance is not here this evening, but a friend of his is here as our guest, and in honor of the guest being here, Dan gave me a few ideas about some questions, but we're happy to welcome Al Jacobson to the show. You are a retired county board supervisor,
right?
And that's why Dan suggested that we have you on the show and talk a little bit about your years of service and that kind of thing. So welcome. Nice of you to be here. We appreciate it so much. Tell us, Al, what district did you serve when you were on?
I was in District 19, which runs from south of Merritt Street down to the water, and ran from the from the east side of the lake over to Division Street.
So right were you Dan's supervisor then?
No, he was fortunately just out of my district.
Okay.
So.
Fortunately. So how do you and Dan know each other then?
Has something to do with Norwegian and Swedish food, and
all right.
And
I get the ties now.
And the same meeting places all the time.
Okay, all right. Well, that sounds good. Well, I'm glad that he suggested that you be on. Now, you were on the county board for 10 years.
Right.
And you just retired this past, we're taping this in June. You retired in May or April?
Well, I guess the end of April or, yeah.
Okay.
I still had one meeting in 1st of May to go to. So.
All right. So what made you decide to give it up?
Well, when I first got on, I was in favor of term limits, and I stayed on 2 more years than I had planned on staying on. But when I turned 67, I figured, do I want to still be on the county board when I'm 69 and I have other things to do? So I told them I wasn't going to run and let somebody else have that great opportunity. So.
And Larry Lautenschlager is your successor now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does he ever call you, I realize he's still just very new into this, but has he called you at all for advice or any kind of thoughts that you could share with him on the different issues?
No, he hasn't. Well, we've talked a couple of times, but not on the phone. But the amazing thing is that we both worked out at Winnebago Mental Health, and I was the union president, and he took over as a union president.
He just keeps following you around.
And now he's following me around. So I asked him what I was supposed to be doing next. So if he had any choices,
Yeah. Yeah. What do you want to do in the next 10 years, Larry?
Sure,
I'll go and set the stage for you. That's funny. Well, some of the committees that you served on, you were on the ADVOCAP board,
right,
and the Information Systems board,
right,
and the biggie was the
Parkview Health Center, right.
Yep. And I guess that's one of the things that I want to talk about, because that certainly during your tenure, underwent some changes.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's changes that we can all relate to. I mean, the other 2 committees I want to talk about a little bit, because I don't really know what they do, and I don't think most of the viewers out there know what they do. But let's talk about Parkview first.
Okay.
did you ask to be on the Parkview board, or were you just appointed?
Boy, I can't
I'm
remember
testing your
now.
memory now,
Boy, I think I put on for it because I worked out of Winnebago, and the meetings were at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Okay.
So I'd just hop across the street, and I was at the meeting.
And is Larry on the Parkview board now?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh my God, I was just, I was just kidding, but wow, he really is.
And
he's
also
stalking you.
He's also on the advocate board too, which I was on. So.
Now, is that just kind of by design because he took your position on the board, or, I mean, so these positions were obviously available, they were open?
Yeah.
And that's probably how he got those board assignments or committee assignments, I'm assuming.
Well, when they're elected, they have a choice. They put down their preference on what boards they want to be on, and sometimes it makes a difference what time they meet.
Yeah.
If you meet at 8 o'clock in the morning, a lot of people can't make that meeting.
Yeah.
So, there's
right.
very few that meet, after 3:30 or whatever. But AdvoCap and Parkview and IS all met in the evenings. So.
I have noticed that over the years about the different county board committees, of which there are a lot, just like there are a lot of county board supervisors. But, these meetings, they do tend to be a lot during the day. And that does make it difficult for a lot of people to attend. And so I would think that may be part of the reason, at least, why more people don't run for county board seats.
Yeah, I would think so. You almost have to be retired or a businessman that can get off of work, so you can go to the meetings. So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Parkview in particular. How many years did you serve on the Parkview board? Was it the whole 10?
10 years, yeah.
Okay. And so, we've got some viewers who have, they've watched this show for the 10 years it's been on the air, but there are others who are fairly new to the community or who maybe haven't seen the show before.
Right.
Tell us a little bit of the history about Parkview, both the old Parkview and what we know as Parkview now.
Boy, the history goes back to, I don't know, the 1860s, I think, when it was a county home and sanitarium, stuff like that. The newer parts was in the 50s they built the two buildings that they've now tore down and consolidated into one, smaller unit.
So I know years and years and years ago, my grandmother was out at Pleasant Acres, is what it was called back then, which was part of the Parkview campus out there. And there were a couple of other buildings there, and I'm sure that they did other kinds of mental health type things in those buildings. But so you're saying that those two buildings are gone. And what about the main structure that was Pleasant Acres, that was the county nursing home? Is that structure still there, or is that gone now too?
No, the pavilion and the Pleasant Acres building are both down.
They're down, okay.
And they built the new one. It's nicer. It's not top of the line, but it's very nice place.
I've heard very good things about it. I haven't had the pleasure of seeing it or taking a tour of it, but I've heard very, very good things about it. So you guys did a great job in doing that. Tell folks what precipitated the need for a newer nursing home, a county-owned and operated nursing home, and what it's like now.
Well, I think the big thing was the cost of having two older buildings. The utilities, the heat. It was either replace all the windows and or do something like that. Plus, the old buildings had a community bathroom, and that was not really nice, to have a community bathroom. And they had problems keeping it filled because when two people were in the same room or whatever, if one left, they had to have the same gender available to move in. And sometimes there was somebody on the waiting list, but there wasn't a bed available for him or her to get into. So.
Yeah, and when you say community, restrooms, you're talking about nothing in the individual rooms for the patients. They'd have to go out of their room
Right,
and somewhere
yeah,
down the
yeah.
hall. And so you'd have potentially how many people sharing a bathroom?
Oh boy, there's probably about 20 people on each
Wow.
unit.
That's
So,
a lot to be sharing a bathroom. I don't think I'd want to do that either. So now, the way it's set up, each room has, are these individual rooms?
Yeah, they're
Okay,
all
and each
all
room has their own
individual,
bathroom
right.
then? Okay. All right. Well, that is nicer in and of itself, you know. And what was the cost, Al, to put up the new building?
Oh boy, it was
Okay.
somewhere's around. Well, the original cost was supposed to be like 22 million, and 36 members on the county board couldn't agree, so it went down to 18 million approximately, and they cut out a lot of things, and then now we're adding it back, or they're adding it back a little bit at a time to what it, I think, should have been in the first time, but you know, people didn't want to spend that much money, so then you take what you can get and
Yeah.
and add on, and they're doing that now with the therapy area.
Sure. Well, before you retired just a couple of months ago, you know, you certainly had, I don't know how long the building's been there. Is it 4 years now, 5 years, something like that?
Yeah, I think 4
So
years.
you had a few years at least to see operational costs and so forth.
Yeah.
You know, how does the new building compare from an operational cost standpoint with what was the old place?
It's a lot more efficient. You know, they're doing a good job. They got, you know, more control and everything, and the care is improving because, you know, it's a smaller unit, and they've downsized. You know, I don't know what it was, about 100 people. That when the county was going through big downsizing, then, you know, Parkview took a big hit on it, but
Yeah.
they still got quality care out there. So
Well, you know, I have heard, I mean, people have this misconception, I think, that a county-run nursing home is, you know, it's for the downtrodden, and because they're downtrodden or of lower income or what have you, they're not going to get the same quality of care. And I've heard nothing but good things about the care, not just the niceness of the facility, but the care that people are receiving out there. So, I mean, you know, there's something to be said for what you guys are doing and have done in the past.
well, there's a waiting list of people that want to get in there. You know, I don't know what it is now, probably about 38 people, something like that.
Well,
So
okay.
so that'll probably be, I don't know what they figure, maybe a year before it recycles through, and then there's always more people putting their name on the list. So.
Yeah. Now, does the facility have, is it permanent guests, or is there a section of it that is just for like temporary guests?
Oh, they have some temporary guests, somebody that would be at a hospital or whatever, have surgery or something, and needs a place to stay because they can't go home. So they might be there a couple weeks to months, and then that's why they're adding on to the therapy area.
Okay.
Because they can get therapy right out there then.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and rehab services and so forth. Okay, good. Well, you know, we touched on very briefly these other two committees or boards that you were on. Information Systems Board, what is that?
They do all the computers and telephone systems for the county.
Okay, so like the 911 dispatch center is part of that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And all the emails and voicemails and everything.
Was that interesting, especially as technology changes?
Yeah, it was. You know, you're going to be behind every day, you know, with technology.
Yeah.
You know.
You can spend $10 million one day, and the very next day
Right.
you're still behind, you know, a little bit. So, yeah, you can't. It was, and I would assume that would be frustrating, you know, both in trying to, you know, just manage things, but also continue to keep things current. I would think
Yeah.
that would be extremely frustrating.
Well, I bet you your computer at home is probably outdated by now. I know mine is.
Yeah.
You know, it's 5
Yeah.
years old. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, mine's only 5 months old, but But it's still outdated
Yeah.
already. It was outdated probably the day or two after I brought it home from the store. But yeah, so I would think that that would be very frustrating just to, stay on top of things and someone always coming to you with the latest and greatest thing, and, there's only so many dollars to go around.
Right,
You can't always have the newest and the best. Now, the Advocate Board, what, we've all heard of Advocate, but what exactly does the Advocate Board do?
Well, it was started by Lyndon Johnson, 57 years ago, something like that. We just had
Advocate, yep.
Yeah, we just had an anniversary or whatever, and I didn't bring a brochure, but they have the Head Start program, not in Oshkosh, but in Winnebago, Fond du Lac, and Green Lake counties. They do weatherization program. That was big couple of years ago. They added a lot of people on, and now the government's cut the funding, so we've had to lay off and that. But they go around and take the older homes and update them, maybe new windows or doors, insulate them, stuff like that. Then they'll help repair furnaces or update them. And then they have a homeowners program where you go to classes and learn how to be a responsible homeowner. And if you go to the classes, then you get, I don't know what it is, $1,000 credit to pay on a mortgage or something. Helps everybody out.
And so as a member of the Advocate Board then, you would oversee these various things. Did the board make decisions as to how much money, for example, would go into like weatherization, or how much would go here, or how much would go there? Was that one of your responsibilities?
Yeah, we would approve, the budgets that they come up with. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, the Head Start program, I guess I didn't realize that was part of the Advocate Board. That too must have been frustrating as you see more and more things changing with regard to children's programming in this country. How do you make decisions like that when you're having to wrestle with so many difficult issues?
Well, I think that's the director's job, and I just sit there and vote yes or no. But they do a good job. They're very budget conscious in that, and they get block grant funds and that, and it's not going to be as much anymore. So they got to lay off people or whatever.
So you kind of took their opinions because they're the professionals. They're the ones dealing with it every day, day in and day out.
Right.
And you took their wisdom, if you will,
I didn't,
and applied that to your decisions.
I didn't micromanage them.
Yeah.
Some people like to do that, but
yeah, it's best not to. I think sometimes, unless if you've got a loose cannon that needs to be micromanaged, and if you've got that on your hands, you may want to replace them. So you have to be able to trust the people who are in those positions. Let's talk about what you're doing right now. You gave it up after 10 years. You're 67. You got a fishing tackle.
I got my fishing shirt on, and
I
got my fishing tan on.
Okay, so you're fishing.
I was out for a little while this morning.
Okay.
Semi-good luck.
So they were biting today.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good.
They're biting every day.
Yeah.
You just got to be in the right.
You got to be in the right place. That's right.
So
I should have said they were biting for you today.
Yeah, sometimes you just go out for a boat ride. So.
Yeah. And besides fishing, what are you doing to fill your time and enjoy life?
Well, I always garden and stuff like that.
Okay.
So fishing, gardening, and
like vegetable gardening, or
yeah.
Okay, or floral type stuff.
And recently, I've been watching political stuff on TV.
Well, you can't avoid it.
I know.
You can't miss it no matter what. But we're past that now, so hopefully, it's been so nice to watch TV.
One phase of it. We're past, so.
Well, it's been so nice to watch TV the last day or two.
Yeah.
And the phone's not been ringing with all these annoying calls.
Well, that's one nice thing about caller ID and answering machines. So,
that's true. That's true, because they won't leave messages. on those things. So you're right. I want to talk a little bit about the size of the county board, because we touched on this a little bit earlier. The county board for the longest time was 38 members, and it was one of the biggest county boards in the state.
Yep.
And I forget, is it 72 counties we have in the state of Wisconsin?
72, I believe.
Yep. And was 38 members the biggest, or was it just one of the biggest?
Winnebago used to have like 45 members at one time.
Oh, my.
I know that.
Wow.
And I don't know. There's probably a couple other counties that have, 36, 38,
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, I know that there was, a few different movements to get the size of the county board reduced.
Yep.
One of the biggest movements was to get it cut in half, and there was a lot of opposition to that, by some county board supervisors too, because they didn't, they came up with all kinds of reasons why they felt that was a bad idea, but, they didn't want, I think, to lose their seat, if you will, or have to run against someone, because as we talked about, there's not a whole lot of people who are running unopposed or who are running opposed these days for county board.
For 10 years, I didn't have anybody running against me. And I always told everybody that was because I was doing such a good job, they didn't want to replace me. Or maybe nobody else wanted the job, so so I was stuck with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, do you think that the size of the county board is too big? Do you think it needs to be reduced?
I was in favor of going down to 27.
Okay.
Which is an odd number, so then you can't have a tie on the votes and that. And 19 would have been a couple more committees that everybody'd have to be on, and I don't know if they would have been able to schedule their life around 4 or 5 committee meetings during the day and the evening. So,
cutting it to 27, what would that have done to people's committees? I mean, would everyone have had to pick up maybe one more committee, or
maybe one more committee, or such a thing as consolidation of committees.
Yeah, because like I said, there are a lot of committees.
Yeah.
There really are. And it does seem like, and I don't know, I haven't served on any of them, but it does seem like some could be consolidated. I mean, I realize you're off now, but have you been hearing any more about any current efforts to reduce the size again, or no?
No, the League of Women Voters said that they weren't going to probably do anything right away. So.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it'll rear its head again at some point, and then we'll hear the arguments all over again. I think one of the reasons, too, that maybe people get to run unopposed, as you said you did for 10 years, is people don't really, I think there's a few reasons. Number one, I think, like you also had suggested, people can't get off in the middle of the day to go to the committee meetings, and so that's a problem. But I think, too, people don't really understand what the county board does. I don't think they have a great appreciation for, the size of your budget for the entire county and just everything that you guys oversee. Now, you were on 3 different committees or boards, but give us a sense, Al, of exactly what the county board oversees. It's really everything in the county.
Oh, yeah. Well, right now we've consolidated with the health department, so that's a bigger committee, and it's the whole county now, except for Menasha, I guess.
So the county board is now overseeing that.
Well, they will be. I think they're overseeing it, or maybe July 1st, whatever. But so they've combined the 2 programs. There. They got the highway department that everybody complains when the snow is falling and that, but the sheriff's department, the controversial airport, that's always controversial.
Yeah.
So, you got your finance, your standard programs that you need to run any county or business. So.
Well, and the other thing too that I don't know that people really understand is you oversee certain aspects of, not you personally, but on the county board. It oversees the Judiciary Committee, which we're going to be talking a little bit about in the next segment with our next guest. And that Judiciary Committee oversees a part of the District Attorney's Office as far as budgeting and so forth, and yet those folks are considered state employees.
Right.
And I always found that to be such a strange dichotomy. You know, it's kind of mixing apples and oranges in the same basket almost, you know. But, you know, you never served on that. So.
No. Well, they got the same problem or thing with the bridge tenders. I don't know if they're state employees because it's a, you know, waterway and that, but they're hired by the city, you know, or the county to operate all the bridges and that. Yeah. So everybody gets mad at them too when you're waiting for a boat to go through and that. So.
Yeah. I had to stop for my first boat about a week and a half ago already, so the season's just beginning. And that was before Memorial Day even, I think, so, or maybe it was just after, I don't recall. So, you know, as you gave up this position and you served your last meeting, you said in early May, what was that like for you, Al, sitting in that chair for the last time and casting some of those last votes? Was there any sadness in your heart or mind at that point, or were you kind of thinking, you know, it's time?
I thought for me it was time. You know, you got to figure out when it's time and let go. You know, I still watch the meetings. You know, I still check the websites out, see what's on the agenda and stuff like that. And if there's something that I got a concern about, I'll probably call them up, or I might even sit in the back of the room and, you know, and when they ask for any opinions or comments from the public, I can stand up and, you know, and I won't have to get the microphone and say, "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," when I want to speak or anything like that.
So there's some perks to this. There's some advantages. Well, I was going to ask, you know, what it's like for you to now sit at home or sit in the gallery and watch it at the courthouse. Do you ever forget that you're not in that position anymore and want to push a button to be recognized or anything like that?
No, I can get up and leave if I want to. So, you know.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So you don't have any sadness really about this.
No.
Do you
I think I did a good job for 10 years and I let somebody else carry on. You know, get some other opinions, ideas. You know.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, you know, several minutes ago about term limits. Do you think that, you know, maybe everybody should have a self-imposed term limit?
Self-imposed, I think they should have,
Yeah. Because, I mean, I realize we have term limits in the sense of you can vote someone out of office, just as we vote people into office. But, you know, there are some who are of the belief that there should be term limits on any kind of elected office, no matter what it is. You know, and so you think that maybe there should be, or should they just have the good common sense that you did to recognize that, you know, it's time?
I would hope that they would at one point say, well, I've been here for, you know, 15, 20, whatever years, and maybe it's time for me to get something else to do or whatever, you know.
Some have been on there a long time. They really have. And I would think that, you know, it's good, I think, sometimes, not that we want to, you know, demean or diss any of their service, because, you know, what you guys do is important work, and it's not always easy work, especially when you're dealing with people's livelihoods and budgets. But, you know, it just seems to me like sometimes it is good to have fresh blood and new ideas. And so, yeah, maybe after a while people should give it up, and some have been on for a long time. I mean, you know, 20, 30 years in some cases.
No, and I think they do a good job, but I also think that maybe somebody else can come in and do as good a job and with a different, you know, slant on everything. So.
Sure. Fresh ideas. All right. Well, listen, thank you for your 10 years of service.
Oh,
It's much appreciated on behalf of, the citizens of Winnebago County.
No.
And I appreciate your being here tonight.
Well, when Dan asked me, I thought maybe he asked me because I would be the first stop on my book tour.
Your book tour.
Well, don't you see, when everybody retires from government,
They write a book.
They write a book, and they get thousands of dollars for public speaking
Yeah.
appearances, and I expect that to happen pretty soon now.
All right. Well, you let us know, and we'll have you back when that happens.
Okay, when I write a book or color
Sure.
one or whatever.
In the
so-
meantime, enjoy fishing.
Oh, thank you. I will.
and I hope
yeah.
they're always biting where you're fishing.
Well, I hope so too, yeah.
All right, thanks so much. You just sit tight. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will be joined by a current County Board Supervisor, Bill Wingren, and Winnebago County Sheriff John Matz. We'll be right back.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
And seated next to him is our County Sheriff, John Matz, and they are joining us, as they have in the past, to talk about the reading of the Declaration of Independence on the courthouse steps on Independence Day, 4th of July. So thanks much for being here to both of you. And a little bit later on, if we have time, we're going to talk about the Judiciary Committee, of which you're now on and which oversees your department. So I have some good things to talk about. So I just want to read a little something here before we get into the crux of this. I couldn't memorize it, so I'm going to read it. Every day thousands, thousands leave their homeland to come to the land of the free and the home of the brave so that they can begin their American dream. But for millions of us, we've been living that dream and experiencing that freedom, all of our lives. And many more freedoms have come through bloodshed and hard-fought efforts of the various wars that the United States has been in over the years. But we first claimed our independence from Britain, and democracy was born almost 236 years ago in 1776. And my co-host Dan Rylance, who isn't here tonight, he was instrumental in getting the Declaration of Independence read on our courthouse steps for, I think the first time, I believe, was 4 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Well, no, because, I don't know. I thought that
Sheriff
then...
Brooks did it once, and Sheriff Matz did it last year.
And Mayor
That wasn't at the courthouse. That was at the library.
Oh, he did it at the library.
That was different.
Okay, but he still read the Declaration.
I believe
right?
that's true, yes.
Okay, so this is the 4th year of reading the Declaration
Yes.
of Independence.
Yes.
3rd year in the courthouse steps.
Right.
Okay, and this will be your 2nd time.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, and you know, so we wanted to do this show because Dan feels it's very important. I feel it's very important. Want to certainly thank Dan for his efforts in, you know, recruiting you to sponsor a resolution to have this thing read. Why does a resolution have to be created to go before the county board to do this?
It was a way just to get some publicity rather than just do it. We had the whole board sign on to it.
Okay.
And as I told my colleagues, we did ask the sheriff beforehand. So if he said no, we would be in trouble. But it was a way of just doing it formally. The reason is when the Declaration of Independence was signed, we didn't have people tweeting or twittering, whatever they do, or calling on their cell phones.
They tweet
the
on
only
Twitter,
way the only way people knew about this was ministers would read it from the pulpits, or there were broadsides printed, which were posters, like the wanted poster of Dan Rylance you see at the post office, that had a broadside. And the third way, and the main way, was sheriffs were asked to read it from the courthouse steps throughout the colonies. And so this is carrying on really a tradition that started those 230-some years ago.
Okay. All right.
And I think I'm correct that we are the only county in the United States that does this.
Really?
So I think this is something we can be very proud of.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Now, see, that's an interesting tidbit that I didn't know. Do you think Dan knew that, and that's why this was so important?
Dan
or
knows everything.
Dan knows. Well,
Yeah.
between you and he,
Yeah.
you guys
No,
know
he
everything.
did, because he did it when he was a member of the legislature in South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked the sheriff there to do it, but I don't know if they do that anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, unless you have someone actually spurring someone on to do it, I don't think sometimes things happen. So, okay, so Mayor Tower did it, Frank Tower. Mike Brooks did it his last year in office as sheriff, and this is your 2nd year, as we talked about, Sheriff. And last year, because of scheduling, we couldn't have you on until after you'd already done it. You know, so this is a treat to be able to talk to you beforehand. What is this like for you to, how did you like it last year, first of all?
I enjoyed it very much. I was honored to do it. The way they wrote and the way we speak today is a little bit different, so there's vocabulary, but you know, I truly consider it an honor. And the gentlemen that signed this, they actually signed their own death warrant. And the conviction that they had, and not with total support from the colonies. There were people that still were loyal to England, and such conviction, willing to lay down their life to create the country that we enjoy and the freedoms we enjoy now.
So, because it's written in a different way than what we speak, how long does it take you to actually kind of bone up on this in advance of July 4th?
Well, I don't remember when Bill asked me to do it last year, but I think he gave me more forewarning this time, I think. But having done it before, you know, I've read it a few times now. Since this year, before I'm going to read it now, so it's coming a little bit easier, and I'm hoping to do a better job.
Yeah.
Well, and the sheriff even said, as we were waiting, he thought he was going to memorize it. So I was darn impressed. I'm waiting for him to just give it memorized.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, give him a few more
Sure,
years,
sure.
and he'll have her down.
He'll have that.
Yeah, I know. I seem to recall Sheriff Brooks when he did it. He actually dressed up in a costume, did he not?
That
Where
was
he tried.
Mark Harris dressed as Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, well, see, when
Yeah.
Brooks was on,
Yeah,
he said
yeah,
he was going to get a
yeah.
costume, but maybe he couldn't
didn't,
find one.
no.
Are you going to be? How are you going to be dressed this 4th of July?
Probably just like I am today. I don't know how I would look with a wig, and I haven't had hair in so long. The dogs would be scared.
That's a good one. All right, well, that's. But who knows? Maybe a lot of those guys were bald.
No, sure.
And there's nothing wrong with baldness at all. Some of our finest actors have been bald. Anyway, so let's talk about you know, what this is all about on the 4th of July. It's on what part of the courthouse is it? Is it off the parking lot, or is it
Be the
more on
actual
Algoma?
formal front on the corner of Algoma and Jackson.
Okay. And like how many people have shown up for this in the past? And has it grown over the years?
Yes. Unfortunately, though, it's the same. A lot of county board members show up.
Okay.
I sent out a newsletter to my constituents, and lots of them showed up. But it's about 50 to 60, I think. And obviously, we would like everybody to go there, especially since it's at 8 o'clock. The parade starts at 9, and it's about 2 blocks away from the parade. So it's very easy to come down, listen. The whole thing takes about 20 minutes tops. You've got plenty of time to get a good seat for the parade. So it's a great way to put into perspective why we are shooting off fireworks and having picnics and having parades. We're celebrating the birthday of our country.
Yeah. Now, is there, for people who can't stand for 20 minutes or whatever, is there seating? Do you sit on the lawn?
You can
should
sit
they
on the
bring
lawn. You can
chairs?
bring chairs if they want, sure.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right. And so, other than just prepping, how you're going to read this and so forth, is there anything else that you have to do to get ready for this?
Well, I tried to put myself in the mindset of what it took to create the document and the conviction it took to sign the document. And it's not just reading several pages of paper. Anybody can do that. But I really think about the words that are written and the meaning behind the words and the freedoms that we now enjoy.
I think of it as the Bill of Rights. We worship the Bill of Rights as we should. All of the rights we have come from the wrongs that were put upon the colonists that are outlined in the Declaration of Independence. And we have a copy of the Declaration here.
Yeah, maybe we can.
One of the
go through
trivia
that
things,
now.
I like trivia, is if you notice, it does not say the Declaration of Independence. That is not a Declaration of Independence. It is a declaration that was signed on July 4th, 1776 by one man, John Hancock, who was the president of the Continental Congress. Each of the colonies had sent representatives to Philadelphia to meet and talk about this. And it was on July 2nd, 2 days before, that a man from Virginia, Richard Henry Lee, authored a resolution declaring that the colonies ought to be free and independent states. That passed, and 2 days later, they thought, well, we should list the reasons why we are declaring our freedom from England. And that's what Thomas Jefferson's task was to do, is to sit down and write down a declaration to not just the people in the colonies, but really to the whole world, because now this new country, the United States, was taking its place not as a subservient colony of a European dictator, but as an equal among the nations of the world. And that's why it's so significant.
So, because it just says declaration, how did it get to be called the Declaration of Independence?
You can answer that one.
You're the history teacher.
A lot of the answers to those things is just because. I don't know another reason.
Well, it just seems to me like, you have a lot of different things that we sort of add on to one or two words in life. It was declaring our independence, and so maybe they just said, well,
They're just clarifying.
it's a Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, exactly. A declaration is just, you're stating something. So we've already declared our independence. This is just reiterating it. It's like, why do we sing the Star Spangled Banner at every baseball game? Can't just one a season be? No. The answer is, I guess, this is what it is. And it's such an important part of who we are and why we are what we are. That didn't make sense, did it?
No, it did. I
Oh,
got
okay,
it.
you got
So
that
I don't
one.
know. That could be frightening in and of itself that I got it.
But the other key is the wording. We. You don't hear the word they did this or this is for them. It's we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Not just some, but all. And they are endowed by their Creator with rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was big. It still is. That's why I said the the Declaration of Independence gave birth later to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which is part of that. And of course, when Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, he speaks of 77 years ago. He's referring back to the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776, when our nation was born.
Okay.
Here's a trivia question for you.
Oh, God.
Do you know what is the first, can you tell me right now, in this place, what the first word of the Declaration is?
You can answer that if you want, Sheriff.
When?
Okay, there you go.
I said right now and in this place.
I don't even understand that question.
All right.
It was like a joke. See, it's like who's on first?
Oh.
What's the first word? When? And then
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, I guess we both get Fs.
No. It was the delivery. Very bad.
You teachers,
Yeah,
all,
I know.
You're all alike, trying to trick people all the time.
That's what I've been told.
So is there, other than the reading, is there anything else that will be going on that morning at the courthouse?
No. One of the things that we did right from the beginning, there's not going to be any speeches. We don't do anything except focus on the document itself, and that's it.
And is this presented there, this document that
Yeah.
we have here? So that's there, and then you have, do you read it off of there, Sheriff, or do you have your own copy?
I have my own copy.
Okay.
That I'll read at the podium.
And so it's there, it's on display, I assume, that people can come up and take a look at it if they want? Okay, all right.
And there's so many people. I brought along a statue of Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah, want to talk about our props here.
Yeah, well, Benjamin Franklin Thomas Jefferson was a young man when he did this. And Benjamin Franklin at that time was really quite old. And Jefferson was frustrated because he was given the task to write the document listing the reasons the colonies would become independent states, a whole new country. And he had sort of given up when Benjamin Franklin sat down and he said, what you've got to do is don't listen to all these other people who are telling you do this, do that. He said, just do what you think is right. And I brought along a demonstration, if you don't mind.
No, go right ahead.
As you know, Benjamin Franklin was a printer. And when he was a journeyman printer, he had an apprentice that was done with his apprenticeship and went out to start a new business of his own. So he made a sign for his shop. And the shop sign that he had designed said, John Thompson, hatter, makes and sells hats for ready money. And he made the mistake of asking some of his friends if this looked good for his sign on his store. And they said, well, you don't have to put hatter, because if you make hats and you have this sign here, obviously people will know you make hats, so you don't need that. So he changed it and just said, John Thompson makes hats and sells them. And he said, well, who cares who makes them? As long as they're a good hat, people will buy them. So that came down to this, that he sells hats for real money. And the answer to that was, well, you don't accept credit, do you? No. Well, then you don't need that. So all you need is John Thompson sells hats. But then someone said, well, you don't give them away, do you? So it ended up with this, John Thompson and the hat. And back in the colonial days, a lot of places had signs with a picture because a lot of people couldn't read, so they knew this was a hat store. So this is a true story that was told by Benjamin Franklin, and he wouldn't lie.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's fascinating. That is. I think the second to the last one would probably be the best, because if I just saw something that, said John Thompson and there was just a picture of a hat there, I don't know that I would understand what that meant necessarily. So.
The point was that Jefferson kept it short and to the point, and that's why it's so important. It's easy to follow, really.
All right. And so we've got Benjamin Franklin, and I'm just looking at the back sides of these. We've got Lady Liberty here, I assume, and what's the story there?
It's just a symbol of the kind of image that would be used back in the in the late 1700s, 1800s, and even today. It's one of the Lennox figures that I collect colonial era history.
Okay.
And I taught history for lots of years, and I tell you, I learned more by going to Boston than I did from reading from books for years and years and years. If you ever get a chance, or any of your viewers, to go to Boston and walk the Freedom Trail, you go to the actual places where these events took place, where the Sons of Liberty met, where Paul Revere's house was, where Samuel Adams worked, where the Boston Tea Party occurred. Being there and feeling that is so awesome. It puts words on a paper, it gives them an image, it gives them a real meat, a body to it, that I think is just fascinating.
Well, and then, you know, it's not right in Boston, but it is in that same area. It's out in Massachusetts, where the Pilgrims landed. You know, I mean, I loved going out there because there is so much history. It's just, you know, you really get a better appreciation for our country and for those times when you can experience and visit some of these places. You know, looking at the actual rock that the Pilgrims first stepped on. You know, I know it's not in the same place as it once was, at least I don't think it is, but you know, it's in a enclosed area with bars around it and so forth. But just to be able to see it and know that that's the first rock that they stepped on when they came here, that's something.
One of the awesome things too was to go to on Battle Road. You know, the old Paul Revere was to warn if the British were coming by land or by sea, and he was to hold the lantern in the, he wasn't, but was to be given a signal from the Old North Church. So he rode to Lexington, which was his first stop, to warn Samuel Adams that, and John Adams, that the British were coming to arrest them. And it was at Lexington where the first shots were fired and colonists were killed. None of the British were killed. So then they marched on, the British did, to Concord, where the colonists had stored their gunpowder and ammunition. And it was there on the bridge leading into the town that the first shots of the war were fired and British soldiers were killed. And that's why in the poem they refer to that as the shot heard round the world, because that made people throughout the world, even though we had been fighting before, now the whole world knew we meant business, that England was having a fight on its hands, and that here the most powerful country that were in the world at that time, the British Empire as I referred to it, was being challenged by these upstarts and the colonists who really had nothing to lose except everything. They, like Sheriff said, they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, and some of them lost their lives. Some of them lost their fortunes, but everyone kept their sacred honor.
Yeah. I want to talk about the document for just a moment longer. I know that in addition to having this read on the courthouse steps, Dan has also tried in the past, I believe, to get the newspaper to publish the Declaration. But, you know, I never think to ask him if they ever did. Do you know in your
I
conversations
believe they have,
with him?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it something that they've done consistently every year?
I don't know that, but
Okay.
I do remember them doing it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Because I do think even if they can't make it down for the actual reading, I think to actually read it, I know we've published it on the website in the
Yes.
past, and we're going to again. You know, I think it is important that people read it and really get an appreciation for it, you know, as the three of us and as Dan has too. Before we start talking about the judiciary stuff, is there anything else about the reading of the Declaration on Independence Day that we need to touch on for folks? Any other trivia bits?
I could go all day with that. But no, we've covered the main thing.
Well, then there's one other prop that I do want to ask you about. There's a can of small sweet peas here. Now, I'm not sure the significance
Well,
of this.
there's a story behind
so,
that.
All right.
When you asked me to come, I prepared. I like to be prepared.
And we appreciate
because
that.
I remembered a story I heard once about Casey. Did I ever tell you about Casey?
I don't think so.
Well, Mrs. Casey was at the funeral home, and everybody came up and they looked at poor Mr. Casey and they said, "What happened?" She said, "It was a Sunday. We just got back from church. I was going to cook a big dinner, and I sent Casey out to the garden to get a head of cabbage. And he dropped over dead." dead, stone cold, passed over, deceased, died, didn't move. And the people looked horrified and they said, "What did you do?" And she said, "What could I do? I opened a can of peas." So that's, you have to be prepared,
I
is
guess
what
so.
the moral of that story is.
Okay, and you always are.
I tried
I mean,
to.
there's a box of stuff here that the props came out of, and all your little signs, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff. We've only got about 2.5 minutes left, which isn't a whole lot of time, but you're on the Judiciary Committee now, which oversees the Sheriff's Department and the jail. And I know when Judge Wolt was on last week's program, he gave me a study that Kimmy and Associates has done. Where are we at on things with the jail?
Well, we are not looking at any immediate expansion. We're still within the limits or the capacity of the jail, the functional capacity. However, the counts have been rising. It's concerning, but yet we're still okay. We're below that functional capacity. We are going to take a look at all of our alternatives to incarceration, make sure that they're working the way that they need to be. Is there anything that we can do to tweak them? Is there something that's being done by someone else that we're not doing? Or is what we're doing now, should we be scrapping it and moving on to something else, or putting more emphasis in another area? So we're going to be doing that very shortly with all of the decision makers within the county, and I think we can make a difference that way as well.
Okay, well, I know one of the things that, the main reason why we had Judge Wolt on was to talk about some of the alternative programs to jail. And, those do seem to be working. Is that what's sort of helping to hold the jail population at bay?
Yes, it is. It is keeping people, it is saving jail bed space. We just need to make sure that they're working at the highest capacity possible, and maybe, like I had said, maybe we need to put an emphasis in a different area. And at some point, and I've said this in the newspaper, unless there's a societal shift, we probably will have to build onto the jail. We need to hold people accountable. There are some people that just need to be in jail.
Yeah.
And there are others that we can use the alternatives to incarceration, but at some point, we may have to add on.
Okay. And real quickly, courthouse security. Would that fall under your purview on Judiciary then?
There's a separate committee, but at one point, yes, it would.
Okay. So,
There's an ongoing study of that, and the sheriff is part of that.
so we'll probably see something forthcoming in the future
Yes.
on increased security. And real quickly, concealed carry. Have you seen any incidents since that has gone into effect?
We have not had any in our jurisdiction, but I know that other jurisdictions have had some issues with people not understanding the responsibilities and limitations of concealed carry. I find it unfortunate that there isn't some mandatory training that should have gone with the permit.
Yeah. That was sort of a debacle in and of itself. So, all right, well, we're out of time, but thanks, guys, for being here, and good luck on the 4th with your reading, and I hope you have a great turnout. So,
Thank you.
thanks very much. That's going to do it for us. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.